for a lot of late bloomers, you may not have felt like you've ever gotten a chance to show up fully as yourself in friendships before. So you're kind of a newbie to friendships, period. And it can make the whole process of navigating the community, finding friends, infinitely harder when you feel like there's some kind of clock countdown going where you need to find these people immediately, or even just like putting pressure on yourself to be like, in order to be queer enough, I need this community. Hello and welcome to the Eva Bloom podcast. I'm your host, Eva Bloom, non-binary queer late bloomer coach, inclusive sex ed speaker, and community facilitator. When I'm not supporting late bloomers in your confidence and dating, you can find me starting a new craft project, reading a sapphic sci-fi or fantasy novel, or playing board games with friends. This podcast, Out in Bloom, is all about giving you the tools and knowledge to help you understand your coming out journey and building confidence in your queerness, plus a little bit of personal storytelling on my part to help you feel a little bit less alone. So if you're not already, please subscribe on YouTube, follow us on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts. We have new episodes coming out every Monday, all about second adolescence, coming out, queer confidence, dating, fashion, all of that good stuff. And if you want even more late bloomer support and community, you can join us at the Late Bloomer Support Club, which is over on Patreon. For $10 a month, you can get access to monthly meetings themed where you can meet other late bloomers, tap into your queer joy, feel connected, and our Discord is open 24/7, so you can join over at patreon.com/Late Bloomer Support Club. Let's get on into the episode. This episode, we're talking about community. I know when I first came out, especially re-coming out as a non-binary lesbian, meeting other late bloomer lesbians felt like I had been walking through the desert and I had my first sip of water. It feels really like, oh, I've needed this so badly to connect with other people who deeply understand what I'm going through, are not confused about my path or my journey, people that we can actually talk to each other about this stuff. And I know that when you're at the beginning of your queer journey, or if you are reconnecting with your queerness, wanting to find other people who are on the same page as you, queer friends, queer community, it can feel so important. Like the stakes feel so high, especially because of this kind of almost mythologized idea of queer friend group and queer community as something that is a pillar to what it means to be queer. And if you don't have that like picture perfect friend group, whether that is the L Word, a bunch of hot lesbians in LA, or the found family queer YA novel like ragtag group of everyone's a different letter of the community, we're all coming together, we support each other, we're our chosen family. If you don't have that immediately after coming out, it can feel a little bit like, wait, I'm sorry. I went through all that process of internal exploration and challenge. I've maybe come out to people in my life, and this isn't even in the welcome package. I don't even get this one positive benefit that I was supposed to get around queerness. And it can make the whole process of navigating the community, finding friends, infinitely harder when you feel like there's some kind of clock countdown going where you need to find these people immediately, or even just like putting pressure on yourself to be like, in order to be queer enough, I need this community. All of that to say, this episode is going to be talking about how do you actually make queer friends, and what does queer community actually mean, and what is it not. And I have a feeling that this is going to be the first of many podcast episodes about community, because there is truly so much we can get into and talk about. It's such a big topic, both in like the history of queer community, and it holds so much personal weight and significance for people. This episode is, I hope, going to be a little bit more of a practical guide to actually get you feet on the ground, making friends and community and getting out of your head a little bit. And I hope that it can be helpful on your journey. So with that, let's start off with breaking down some definitions. Let's get us on the same page. What does community actually mean? Because I feel like oftentimes as queer people, when we're coming out or even like moving through the community, we can conflate these different ideas together when they don't necessarily mean the same things. Especially for a lot of late bloomers, you may not have felt like you've ever gotten a chance to show up fully as yourself in friendships before. So you're kind of a newbie to friendships, period. Trying to figure out like, okay, what does this mean? How does that work? And then for a lot of us, we also might not have had experiences where we've been able to show up in community as our full selves either. So it can be hard to just be figuring it out and then also trying to understand these larger systems. So let's start with friends. Friends are people that you have a one-on-one connection with, that there is mutual care and support. There is depth to understanding who each other is. There is maybe you love your friends. You're showing up for them in a deep way. You feel seen by them, and there is an individual connection. And of course, there's different types of friendships, different kinds of intimacy that might exist. You might have friends that maybe you spend more or less time with that show up in your life in different ways, and that's totally wonderful and fine. Not every friendship has to be the exact same, just like not every person is the exact same. Next, we have a friend group where we have an ensemble of people who are all friends together, and there is people taking shared initiative to have experiences together. There is intentionality. Maybe you have different rituals. Maybe you go to dodgeball together every week, or you have a book club that you see each other, or you go to karaoke together, or you do dinner parties. Like there is some kind of intentionality where you come together and you do stuff together and you support each other and your goals, and you all kind of know each other with a certain level of depth. And then moving from friend groups, we have community, which is a larger group where you might not know every single person to a great amount of depth, but you are moving together with shared values and goals. And there is, in general, support that is offered between different members of the group, even if you're not close personal friends. And you might not 100% agree on everything. There might be conflict, as there is conflict sometimes between friends or friend groups. There might be disagreements, but together you are moving generally in the same direction, even if there are differences in opinion within the larger community. So we can see how those are three different things that are maybe represented or given this like pedestal within the community to say, oh my gosh, to live this beautiful queer life, you have these amazing queer friends, and then you all hang out together in a group, and then you're also part of this larger community. And the reality is all three of those dynamics are incredibly nuanced and challenging. There can be so many barriers and things to work through when it comes to creating all three of those dynamics. And it is not intuitive for a lot of us to know how to be good friends or to know how to build friendships. It might not be intuitive or might take a lot of time to then bring those friends together into a friend group. And people have written a lot about what it means to be in community. We have Adrienne Maree Brown's Emergent Strategy talking about how to be in community with one another. We have Kai-Ching Tom's I Hope We Believe in Love. That's definitely not the name of the book, but another one about the pitfalls of queer community and what does it actually mean to show up for each other. Yeah, this stuff just doesn't magically all happen. So I'm going to walk us through kind of some different strategies for how to actually make friends and then make friend groups and be in community. So I just really want to affirm, I know myself, I've had many points in my life, and even after coming out as a lesbian, I initially had this big friend group that was able to come together through throwing brunches from a bunch of little friend groups all coming together. And it was this really beautiful initial moment of like, oh my God, I'm doing it. I'm being gay. I have this friend group. And for a lot of reasons, people moved, people's priority changed, and the friend group changed. And when that kind of dissolved, I was left feeling really frustrated. And I've had moments of my life where I felt like, oh my gosh, like, what isn't working? What's the missing piece here? Is it something to do with me? Like, am I not a good friend? Like, am I not a interesting person like to be around? And it took time and different practical things changing, like maybe where I was living or the different ways that I was prioritizing to show up in queer community, and also the people that I was connecting with. You can pour your whole heart into a friendship or a dynamic, and if that person has different priorities or they're not reciprocating and they're not pouring it back, no amount of you trying to make it work is going to make it work, just like in any romantic relationship. So that is to say that if you feel like friendships feel hard for me, or I've had some like challenges in friendships, friendship breakups, that you are not inherently bad or wrong person, or that you are not a bad friend or unworthy of friendships. Friendships are one of the most beautiful, like deep, meaningful things in this life. And they're also one of the most complicated, nuanced, and challenging. So it is worth being in the muck and learning and exploring. And sometimes if a friendship needs to part ways, it needs to part ways, but that it's worth it to keep going. Let's get into the practical stuff. I've given you enough of my own experience and hopefully some reassurance. Let's actually talk about how we make some freaking friends. Let's start with where to meet potential queer friends, because we got to start somewhere. And first of all, finding sapphic community might take a little bit of work, but that doesn't mean that we're not out there. There's a lot of different social media tools that you can use, search engines that you can use to get started. Some that I recommend are Eventbrite as a great way to find events. A lot of events are hosted on that platform, so you can search up queer and you can put it to your city or surrounding cities, or sapphic, lesbian, bisexual, like whatever you want, and that is going to get you started somewhere. TikTok is also a really great place to find events as a search engine. Similarly, look up queer, sapphic, lesbian, bisexual, etc. in your city. Some events are still on Facebook, so that can be a place to look as well. And when it comes to finding sapphic events, I highly recommend utilizing some kind of word of mouth. Get your foot in the door to one event. And if you can muster up the courage to ask maybe the organizer after the event or somebody that seems friendly that you're talking to, ask them what other cool sapphic events are happening in the city. You can really be honest, be like, hey, like I'm looking to make more sapphic friends. I would love to get more involved in different sapphic community spaces. Maybe tell them a little bit about what types of events you're looking for. You're like, I'm kind of a crafty person, love to read. I don't know if you've heard of any book clubs or any like crafting groups in the city. Let me know. And that is honestly your best bet, because the people who are coming to the events are going to be able to get past the social media, internet censorship around sapphic events and tell you where to go. And then you go to those events and you ask them and keep the ball rolling. There are also a lot of event groups on Instagram. So if you look up, again, queer in your city can be a place to start. And once you find some of those events, if you go through the following of those events, you'll usually find other similar events. So if you're looking for Queer Run Club in Toronto and you look at who's following, it'll probably be a bunch of other kind of sporty, fitnessy adjacent like Toronto groups, and you can go from there. You can also look in the comments of those posts, because often the groups will comment and uplift and support each other, and that can be a place to go. So we got to put on our little detective hat, our little investigation hat, and get down and into it. Lex is also a place where you can find out where the sapphics, queer trans people are gathering. People are posting events on Lex. Lex is a queer owned and founded social app that was based on personal ads set up by the queer community, which is a really cool part of queer history, using personal ads to help us find each other in different queer language. I would highly recommend that you go check it out and the history of that if you haven't heard of that. But Lex is really awesome. It used to be more of a dating focus. Now it's more of a general community connection. So you can look for events being posted on there. You can also make an ad. Say, hey, I'm new. I want queer friends. I'm looking for sapphic events. Maybe you're looking for sporty events. You're like, where are all the sporty sapphics going? I want to be there. And people can reply to you and they can give you some recommendations. So lots of different options there. In terms of actually getting your little booty in an event space, these are the things that have worked for me in the past. One, wear something that's going to be a conversation starter. Open the door already for somebody to say hi. Wear a shirt that says girl kisser on it, or wear big earrings that are really like eye-catching, that have big cowboy hats on them. Wear some really cool sparkly boots that might be harder for people to see, but wear a conversation starter on your body. It can really open the door for conversation. So somebody compliments that and then you start the conversation going. You compliment them. I would also say in your game plan, you're gonna go up. Maybe you're gonna get a drink. I don't drink. Maybe we get a cutie little mocktail. We say hi to the bartender if it's not so busy yet. We compliment them. And you already have, your plan of action. You're not gonna just stand there and be like, I don't know what to do. You know what you're doing. Maybe you also, bonus points, you give somebody a compliment at the bar. And if you did nothing that night, you have already talked to 2 people, had 2 exchanges, and set yourself up for success. So that way you can at least have something in your pocket for, okay, I did a thing. So you don't start feeling overwhelmed and spiraling and freaking out that you're not putting yourself out there the way you want to. In terms of actually having conversations with people, I love to absolutely get everything I can out of the fact that you are having a shared experience. You already have something in common. You are both in this space together. So we can assume that maybe you already have common interests. Maybe you're both queer. If you're both going to a book reading and signing about a new queer horror book, you're like, whoa. And maybe we have some other queer horror fans in the crowd. So you are not as strange and have nothing to say to these people. You already have a bunch of things in common, even if they are new people to you. So I love to, like I said, milk the shared experience. So we say, oh my gosh, have you been to this venue before? Have you heard this author speak before? Do you have a favorite drag performer that's performing tonight? And if they've been to this place a bunch of times, you can ask them for recommendations. You can ask them about their favorite experiences they've had here. And that'll hopefully get the ball rolling where they can ask you. And if they're new, you can say, oh my gosh, we're new together. Do you want to stick around and be buddies here? You can ask about maybe how their journey finding queer community has been, whether they've always lived in your city. There is stuff, and it'll get the ball rolling. I'm also a big fan of, after you have a little conversation with somebody, if you felt like it went well and you connected with them, ask for their Instagram to connect more. That is always the most frustrating thing, to walk away from a really great conversation to be like, no, and I'll never see you again. Asking for someone's Instagram doesn't have to be necessarily with dating intentions. A very beautiful part of queer community friendship is that there is more fluidity between friendship and dating. So if it does turn into dating, great. But if not, also great friendship wise. I find that Instagram can be a great way. If you start following each other, you start seeing each other's stories and posts, you can kind of get a sense of who they are, what they like to do. Maybe you comment on some stories. Maybe you get a little conversation going that way. And then that way, maybe you can invite them to another event. You can say, hey, I'm already going to this queer kickboxing pop-up. Do you want to come with? And that can be a way of hanging out with them again, or being like, oh my gosh, that conversation that we had at that event was so fun. Would you ever want to get a coffee sometime? And it can feel less nerve-wracking once you've had some conversation with somebody to then pitch a second friend hang. I also love that in-person to Instagram exchange and build up as a great way of creating a consent-focused exchange. Somebody's also replying to your stories. If they're liking your posts, you can get a sense of yeah, this person's into it. And also, sometimes people need a little bit of a follow-up. If you are following up with respect and not assuming anything, that's always awesome. Queer and sapphic people, we got mental health stuff. We're very busy. It's okay to send a little follow-up too. And with that, whether you're doing this in the Instagram exchange or your first hangout or the first time you meet in person, it's okay to be transparent, to say, hey, I'm like looking for new queer friends. Is that something that you are open to or you're also looking for? I would love to get to know you better. It's totally awesome to be clear and explicit with people. Lots of neurodivergent people love you to be really clear of what you're looking for. And also that can help you find people who are aligned. Because if people are like, no, I'm not looking for that, you can be like, great. And then go on to looking for people who do want that. There are also lots of great online spaces for making queer friends. Obviously, I run one, the Late Bloomer Support Club, the Discord, and monthly meetings are a really awesome place to make friends, especially if you are not in a big city or you have chronic illnesses or disabilities that make it hard for you to get out to in-person events at all or as regularly as you would like to. Having an online space can be really awesome, especially if you are a late bloomer and you really want to connect with other people who had a similar journey to you, and the plethora of other Discords that provide a space for people of specific journeys and experiences. So would highly recommend taking a gander on a Discord because it can be really supportive and a potentially great space for finding community. One of the activities that I also like to do with my clients around dating that I think is really applicable here in a friend-making context is reflecting about what types of values and interests and lifestyle are you looking for in a friend. And that way you can kind of use that to be your guide to be like, okay, where would these type of people that I'm looking for hang out? What type of events are they going to? What type of spaces are they going to be in? And also that way you can be really clear, because I know for myself, and I feel like for a lot of queer people at the beginning of our journey, there can be this idea of like, okay, I want to make queer friends, so I'm just going to go to the village and go to a bar. Or like, okay, every queer person is a potential queer friend, which is true. And just because you're both queer doesn't mean that you have the same ways that you want to spend your weekend or values or way that you want to show up in friendships. So it can be helpful to be a little bit more specific about who you're looking for in terms of queer friendship to find people that are really aligned with you and the types of relationships that you want to build. So some things that you might want to think about: what traits are you interested in, or are you drawn to? Kindness, curiosity, sense of fun and play, introspection, spirituality. I guess spirituality is more of like a value, but also talking about values like, are they valuing their friends and family, value communication, honesty, interdependence, community building. In terms of friendships, I feel like interest and lifestyle is also a really big deal. Are you a more introverted person that wants to hang out in a more introverted way? You don't want to go to big club nights. Do you want to hang out with somebody who's going on hikes? Be with your little granola queer girlies, getting out on the paddle. Vancouver people, sound off. Such a Canadian reference for me. Do you also want to hang out with friends who are really excited about traveling? We travel buddies. You want to hang out with a bunch of nerds? Hello. And thinking about, okay, where would these people hang out? And maybe you can use some of those keywords in your searches on Instagram or on Eventbrite or TikTok, and just be aware of who you are and what type of friends you're looking for. Next, I want to talk about and address some myths about queer friendships and things that you might have in your head that are preventing you from going out and making some really cool queer friends. The first myth is the idea that if it takes work, then it's not worth doing or you're doing something wrong. Friendships do take work. And not to get up on a little soapbox, but I do think that the lockdowns and different stages of the pandemic have influenced how we have learned to be in relationship with each other and in the world. I think that we've been acclimated to a certain level of convenience with everything being at our fingertips on various apps, that we have the ability to reach anyone at any point. text, FaceTime. That the flip side of this is that it can be really easy to start really thinking about our own convenience over everything else. I know for myself, I went through a phase where I was really canceling on people pretty readily or flaking on people because I was like, oh, maybe I'm just like a little bit tired. Maybe I don't want to like travel that far. But for me, I'm now moved into a place where obviously I'm going to check in with myself. And if I really don't have capacity, I'm not going to push myself past that. But that friendships matter to me. And that if I don't see my friends a certain amount of times, or like I'm not keeping up with them, I'm not on a FaceTime or like seeing them, then I'm going to miss out on their lives and I'm going to miss out on an opportunity to support them. And more often than not, even if I'm feeling a little tired or a little depleted, that spending time with friends is going to bolster me and is going to fill up my cup and make me feel good. So, really recognizing friendship is worth putting myself out there, even if I'm not at 100%. It's still worth experiencing a little bit of discomfort for the overall benefit of nourishing a growing friendship. That is at least my little hot take, and also from my experience. And then it also takes effort. Like I said, not everybody is going to be a good fit for you friendship wise. And that it's going to take time and effort and intentionality in terms of building those friendships. That you're not immediately going to meet someone and have a certain level of intimacy. They're not immediately going to show up for you like in a huge way. You have to build that over time. It doesn't magically appear. And I think it's healthy for you to take time to build that level of trust and dependability and increasing intimacy as opposed to immediately becoming really, really close. That isn't always the most authentic connection if you are immediately jumping into it as opposed to building that trust and showing up for each other over time. So it can take time. If it's not immediately happening and it requires you to be like, okay, I'm going to put intentional friend time into my schedule. I'm making this part of something that I'm clocking in hours to do to make it happen. Another myth, or I feel like something that people get in their head around both dating and making friends, is around rejection. The idea of like, oh my gosh, I got rejected. I reached out to this person after we met at an event and they never replied to me. So nobody ever wants to be my friend. That's not true. Sometimes people get busy. Sometimes that person realize maybe you aren't the best fit. And that doesn't mean that you should stop trying. That doesn't mean that you should keep putting yourself out there. Sometimes it takes going to a couple of different events to find your people. Maybe it takes, again, going to a couple of different meetings at that book club before you start to build that friendship and community. It's not going to happen instantly, and that's okay. And a rejection from somebody saying, no, I don't want to, I actually have full capacity for friends, or I don't necessarily know if we're the right fit, that is an opportunity for you to be like, okay, I can now like make space in my life for other people that I'm going to connect with. So I'm not going to pour energy into this connection that isn't aligned. And it doesn't say anything about that you're a bad person or nobody's ever going to be your friend. It just means that this person wasn't the right fit and we're going to keep it trucking. Another myth that I hear from a lot of people is around living in a small town and struggling with that in terms of building friendships. That can be very challenging, and maybe it requires a little bit of creativity, thinking outside the box. Queer people are everywhere, and maybe it just takes a little bit of extra time and work to find where they are, where you live. Maybe it takes driving a couple of hours to a bigger city, or finding a Discord, or maybe the events happen less often, that when you do go to the event, you are chatting with people and making friends and adding people on Instagram so you can meet up with them later in between events, or leaning on something like Discord to find people who are maybe around the world. There are opportunities and places for you to meet queer people no matter where you live, even if you have to maybe try a little bit something different. Now that I've talked a little bit about making friends and building that friendships, going from acquaintance that you met at an event to getting that first coffee date and inviting them to something that you're going to, initiating like that process for making queer friends, I want to talk about building friend groups. For those of us who have that idea of the L word friend group, or whether or not you believe that all the characters in Fantasy High, Adventure 20's Fantasy High, are all queer, I'm on board that they're all queer. That like chosen family, all different part of the queer community, all come together. If you have that idea, it can be like, okay, I have all these disparate friends. How do I create a friend group? And there are a couple ways that you can do that. The first, maybe self-explanatory way, is to introduce your friends to each other. If you're going to an event that you think that multiple of your friends might be interested in, bring them all down. If there's a musical production happening in your city and you have a handful of musical theater fans in your friend group, say, I've invited a group of us and we're gonna go. Maybe you go to dinner afterwards and you talk about the show, or you get drinks afterwards, talk about the show. Bring them together. That's very beautiful and exciting, even if it's nerve-wracking. Something that I've also done a lot this year is to start a reoccurring hangout, whether that is a book club or a brunch or a supper club, a games night, a craft afternoon. That's something up reoccurring with a small, I would say a medium to small group of people, because it's a hard time balancing everybody's schedules. But if you get 4 to 5, I feel like might be a sweet spot to get everybody's schedules aligned and you can actually see each other on a reoccurring basis so you don't get swept up in the overwhelm that is life, and you actually start seeing people regularly and building those bonds. And I will remind you that most people are really flattered when people want to be friends with them. And there are so many of us that are looking for friendships and friendships of greater depth right now. And I think extending the invitation is something that a lot of people are really beautiful and will be really excited about. I'm also a big believer in, if it doesn't exist yet, you can create it. In 2023, when Dimension 20 released their Dungeons and Drag Queens, their first season, I said, oh my gosh, I need to experience this with a group of fellow Dimension 20 fans. And I said, okay, well, I want that to happen, so I'm going to make it happen. And was able to host it at the very beautiful Glad Day bookstore in Toronto, beautiful venue space. So many people came up in cosplay, like dressed up. So if you want a particular type of queer community to exist where you live, you can be the one to start it. And I think for a long time, especially because community facilitation is such a big part of my job, running the Late Bloomer Support Club, running my 8-week group program Queer Enough, I was like, oh, like I do this so much in my real life, I'm tired. I don't want to also do this when it comes to my personal life and my friends. But it has been so meaningful to initiate these different groups. And I'm also learning and growing that I don't need to be the only one that is carrying the weight, but we've at least lifted some stuff off the ground. And it's been really beautiful to watch it happen, and really kind of normalizing that this is how I want to be with my friends will hopefully allow others to initiate and create these kind of moments too. Lastly, I want to talk about community. So we've talked about friends, friend groups. What is this ephemeral community? I think one of the things that we maybe get wrong or get confused about when it comes to queer community is that queer community is not our friends. Queer community is not our friend groups. We don't have to like or get along with 100% with everybody in our community. And that it's okay to have differences of thoughts or opinions. You don't have to be 100% on the same page. And we can move through as long as we have the same values and are generally moving in the same path. And I think, honestly, this is where I'm opening up the conversation for dialogue, too. I mean, in my book club this month, we're reading On Community by Casey Plett, so I'm ready to learn. But to me, conversations I've had with other queer friends that grew up in the church. I grew up in the United Church of Canada, which is a very progressive church where there were literally like pride flags in the main worship area. But that has been my pivotal experience of what it means to be in community. Or one big example, people that look after each other's kids during the like church service, or people that will help each other move, or people that will share advice. When I was going to university, we don't necessarily know everybody in the church community, but people in general are like stepping up to take care of each other and that you have this regular meeting around shared values and interests. And I think a lot of queer community that can translate to volunteering for different queer organizations or being a part of different activist movements. You're not besties with everybody, but you all moving towards a shared goal. Or a choir where you meet regularly, but the group is kind of quite big that you maybe don't know everybody. And I think that being part of a larger community is really essential for our well-being and our social emotional health as people, but it can take extra time. It can be an extra challenge to make that happen for ourselves. And that's something that I am certainly working on. And yeah, I just want to highlight the differences between that and a friend group, and that is something that is continuing to evolve for me as well. As we close off this episode, I want to really bring it home that it's okay if you're in the process of figuring this out. It's okay if you are, in terms of building your house of queer friend groups or queer communities, you're still getting rid of old moldy bits, or you're just starting with laying the first bricks of your foundation. It can take time, and if this is something that you struggle with, that you're not broken, it's not a moral failing. This is, like I said, friendships are something that's really challenging for all of us in this life. And it's like I always say with dating and with finding your queer identity and building confidence, it is so, so worth it to be a beginner and to be trying. I've been there. I've been in those dark places, and I feel more confident now. So hopefully I can at least be a case study of how it's possible to build that friendship and to experience setbacks and to keep going. Affirming that you are worthy of deep queer connection, that there is space for you in queer community, even if you haven't necessarily found it yet. And making new friends can be nerve-wracking, takes vulnerability and courage, and you got this. Some little homework at the end of this week's podcast. Shoot somebody a DM. Invite them to an event you're already going to, or ask them out for coffee. Look up one queer event in your area and make a point to get your little butt out there. Maybe take some time to reflect on those questions about what type of friends you're looking for or what type of queer community would feel really aligned for you. I believe in you. This brings us to the closing segment of our podcast, where I show you what I'm loving right now. Books I'm reading, music I'm listening to, what I'm cooking right now, which has often become what I'm cooking for and with my girlfriend, and creators I'm loving. So starting with books, I have been on a journey to get out of a reading slump and to read more really good books this year. And I just finished a graphic novel called Thieves by Lucy Byron. And it's really cute. It is a sapphic YA about these two girls in high school. They're finishing up their last year of high school, and both of them are imperfect. They're struggling. They are doing some thievery and unlearning some unhealthy patterns that they've had as they get into relationship with one another. And I think this is a really beautiful and important book for me to read. That you don't have to be finished your healing in order to be in a relationship with somebody, and it's okay to let people support you. And I really love just showing characters that are imperfect, that lie and make mistakes and are struggling, and that you can still have conflict with people. Friendship, great friendship book. We did it. We tied it in the episode. That you can still have conflict with your friends and the people in your relationship with, and that'll be okay. And you can move through that and support each other. So, Thieves by Lucy Byron. In terms of what music I'm listening to, I'm currently listening to a lot of The Beaches. They have a new album coming out in next month in August, and I'm loving Last Girl at the Party. I really feel like with The Beaches, first shout out, Canadian band, started in Toronto, like me, we love that. But I feel like with The Beaches, I tap into an alter ego, because they feel very I saw them live at Budweiser last summer, I think. And they were so fun. And I think they have a very cool rock star persona where they're like, I don't give a heck. I'm just going to do what I want. Dun, 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 dun. And they're like party girls, and I'm really not like that. So it's fun to listen to their music and be like, yeah, I'm going to be the last girl at the party. I'm not going to leave until 6 a.m. Meanwhile, you know fully well it's midnight, and my friends are like, Eva, you can stay a little longer. And I'm like, okay. I stay until 1:30, and I'm like, okay, can we go home now? That's me in reality. In terms of what I'm cooking in general, but also specifically within For My Girlfriend, we were just at the cottage together with some of our friends after Pride, and it was so nice and sweet to be out in the outdoors and making some food together. And I just made some really good pasta. I cooked eggplant for the first time, which I've never done. And I realized that I've never really learned about the foundations of Italian cooking. I got really into Korean cuisine during 2021, 2022, when it kind of became trendy. Also, because there's a lot of stuff that's pretty easy to veganize. And I eat mostly plant based. But I want to learn about Italian cooking. So I think that might be something that I explore. So if you know any good plant-based Italian cooking creators and chefs, please let me know in the comments. I'm all about it. And in terms of creators I'm obsessed with, like I said, got out of the city and off the grid for a little bit, and I'm continuing to do that. I am really valuing touching grass. So one creator that I really love for that is Frankie Simons, I think, who has a newsletter that I'm a part of. And she is I don't know if ecologist is the right word, but definitely very inspired by nature in terms of her philosophy and the way that she thinks about community and queerness and mental health. And I believe has done some like degrees around naturey stuff. And yeah, following her Substack has been really cool, and of course also on Instagram, so would highly recommend. But that brings us to the end of this episode of Eva Bloom. Again, please subscribe if you're not already on YouTube. Follow us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Rate us 5 stars so that other late bloomers can come find us. Also, you can book me for one-on-one coaching to support you in your coming out. I've been doing a lot of dating coaching this summer and also intimacy coaching to help people around communication and confidence in the bedroom. I have 10 years in that field in terms of spicy education, so it really makes me happy to support sapphics in that. You can also bring me to your college or university for this coming term, 2025-2026. I would love to come and give some inclusive education, talk about dating and healthy relationships, consent. You can check out all that information in the show notes or in the YouTube description. I would love to come to your school or your organization or your brand and talk about LGBTQ plus issues and how to support folks. But that's all for me today. Keep curious, keep blooming, and I'll see you in the next episode.